Hello all. Thank you all for coming in today. Welcome to today's EHRC Samvad talk. Today we will be hearing from Professor Shrikant, Mr. Divyaraj and Mr. Dilip on the making of the E-Manas. The E-Manas, Karnataka Mental Health Management System MHMS, has been recently launched by the Chief Minister of Karnataka, Shri B.S. Yediyurappa, on June 26th, and it has been rolled out for widespread usage. This talk is titled The Design of E-Manas, Karnataka Mental Health Management System, presented by the creators, the MHMS team. The team itself is a multi-institutional one and has members from the eHealth Research Center at IITB, Healthy Life Ventures, and NIMHANS. Dr. T.K. Shrikant is a professor at IITB, where he is a convener of the eHealth Research Center. His research interests are in healthcare information and management systems, data privacy, geometric modeling, and computer graphics. He has a PhD from Cornell University and a BTech from IIT Madras. Divyaraj is the head of programs at the EHRC IIIT Bangalore. His areas of interest are large-scale public health and social initiatives and end-to-end implementations. He has a postgraduate degree from IIIT Bangalore and a BTech from IIT Varanasi. Dilip VS is the founder of Healthy Life Ventures, a digital health startup incubated at the IIITB Innovation Center. He has been in the clinical information domain since 2012. His areas of interest include EHR standards, clinical data interoperability, and public health systems. He has a BTech from Kerala University. Without much ado, I will let Shrikant take the stage from now. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Welcome to all of you on the webinar today. It's great to see you all. On behalf of my co-speakers, thanks for joining. We'll take turns talking, so Divyaraj and Dilip will come in for some parts. But basically, what we're going to talk about is the journey we went through in the development of this E-Manas Karnataka system. So Jaya mentioned, this was launched a few weeks back and is now just getting rolled out. This is a kind of a health portal registry and various things that we'll talk about in more detail. The project is a conceptualized initiated by the National Health Mission, Government of Karnataka, along with NIMHANS. IIIT has played the role of the technology partner here, helping them with the design of the system and actually following all the implementation. We work with Healthy Life, who provides one of the key platforms here. We'll see that as we go through the talk. The talk itself will be in roughly 4 parts. I'll start by getting the background, the objectives, what are the issues that we had to deal with from a design and what are the challenges that we foresaw. Dilip will talk about the standards-based approach that we took, what is evolving the country in terms of health standards, and the kind of EHR platform that we have chosen to build this system around so that we can have a patient-centric approach, the data being collected. Healthcare is an interesting field. It's evolving. The digital health is evolving fast. There are lots of ideas, concepts, standards, legal requirements, and other things all coming together. And actually, during this pandemic, the need for digital health and remote telemedicine and other things has been actually pronounced. So we see these kinds of systems coming up, and more and more of these getting developed and hopefully integrated. So the next part, we'll talk a little bit about the system architecture, security issues, some of the key issues, technical issues, which will be related to security, privacy, scalability, and so on. And finally, Divyaraj will lead us through the journey that we took, the design and development process that we went. The context here, why we are doing this, we are part of the eHealth Research Center at IIITB. A quick introduction. It's an interdisciplinary research center where we look at how ICT can help improve the delivery of healthcare services, especially in underserved communities. We try to see how technology can help improve affordability, accessibility, and availability of healthcare services. And from a technology standpoint, we look at devices related to health data, the management of health data itself, and the processing of health data, as well as systems that can help deliver health services. As part of this, we had identified 3 focus areas: mental health, malnutrition, and disabilities as the 3 key areas. And mental health is the focus of today's discussion. And that's how we got to, as part of this initiative, we have been, as part of the mental health focus, we've been working with NIMHANS, the premier institute for neurosciences and mental health in India. And over the years, we have worked on a number of digital initiatives with them on seeing how mental health services can be done better. As mentioned, in collaboration with the Department of Health and Family Welfare Services, Government of Karnataka, under the National Health Mission in NIMHANS, we started on this project. A little bit of background on why this is all, where this all comes together. It turns out that mental health from an overall healthcare services, typically underserved, has been somewhat ignored predominantly. And NIMHANS did a study a few years back and showed that actually there was a high prevalence of mental health conditions or potential mental health conditions in the country. Maybe as much as 1 in 10 people would have some issues at some point. But unfortunately, there's very low accessibility to healthcare, and because of the low availability of doctors and medical professionals, there is what's seen as a significant treatment gap. Karnataka, however, has been a pioneer in mental health care services. Of course, with NIMHANS here, they've been driving a lot of such initiatives. And the state is one of the few which has a very active district mental health program driven by the state government across all districts. So mental health in Karnataka and other states is provided by both government and private establishments. However, from our standpoint, there is a very low level of digitization. There's very low access to, and almost very difficult to get access to health data. Let's say if you go from one doctor to the other, you would literally have to carry those papers, pretty much like in other disciplines. Some of the other diseases, at least the government has rolled out digital systems for tracking, non-communicable diseases or other things like that, but mental health till recently had very little of that kind of support. At the same time, 3 years back, the government rolled out the Mental Health Care Act and the rules which are being notified soon. This comes from a different perspective, and it essentially establishes the rights of people with mental illnesses. So it guarantees them or provides them rights which will allow them access to treatment, importantly, access to the medical records at any time, online access to many facilities, judicial review type of process, and then certain things called advance directives and so on, which became part of the act and therefore are available to every citizen. So in this backdrop, the former Health Secretary Karnataka, Mr. Ajay said, came up with this idea saying, why don't we build a digital platform that will integrate mental health services across the entire state, taking into account the different stakeholders, the patients and caregivers, the providers, the hospitals themselves, the district and state administrators, and so on. And build this around the registry of health records. So one of the key pain points in healthcare is what's called continuity of care. As a patient moves from doctor to doctor, clinic to clinic, which is very natural for what we do, the data doesn't necessarily move along with them. So while patients are mobile, the data is not typically mobile. I mean, all of us are, I think, victims of this, irrespective of the kind of hospital we go to. And this becomes particularly a problem when you go into the larger public health and statewide context. So part of it also is to develop a registry of mental health professionals in clinics so that there can be easy access to information and compliance with the Mental Health Care Act and so on. And as part of that, there are other government services that are coming up digital. Can we try connecting them so that there's a unified system at the end of the day? This is a new initiative. There's nothing like this for mental health in India. So we are looking at something first of its kind. And then we are hoping that this will get rolled out potentially to other states and in the future also linked to other kinds of diseases and health conditions. So at a quick level, there are many different kinds of issues and challenges that we looked at. So one is the usability part. It's very important that digital systems like this actually get used by the intended users. So the UX, user experience design, usability become very important. As I mentioned, standards are evolving fast and we will talk about it more. So compliance to standards is important. We can't be a silo. We don't want to generate yet another silo. So we want to, there's a very active health data ecosystem emerging in India. We need to integrate with that. one of the key things we'll talk about is what is identity all about? How do we make sure that a patient's data is consistently recorded and accessible across clinics, across states maybe, right? There is no single uniform ID. There are things like Aadhaar, but they have their own legal and other restrictions that are there right now. Because we're dealing with health data, which is one of the most sensitive pieces of data of an individual, security and privacy become paramount issues. But at the same time, health data needs to be shared for the well-being of the patient, for the proper care of the patient. So how do we share it while still maintaining security and aligning with the various laws and regulations that are coming up? The personal data bill, data protection bill is on the table. It should happen anytime now. And then we want to be able to make sure the system can scale both in terms of functionality as well as scope and so on. And finally, we want to, we wanted to make sure that we use standard, open source, current technologies so that this can be future proof. If you notice in this thing, a lot of these are evolving, right? The standards are evolving, the health ecosystem definitions evolving, identity management is changing by the day, privacy context and rules are changing. So we had to juggle with all this while we thought about how to design the system. So to take it forward, I'll now invite Dilip to talk about how we got started on the whole design. Dilip, it's all yours.
Thank you, Professor, for the great introduction. We are actually happy. Healthy Life is very happy to be, part of this initiative. This is it's been a unique experience for us as well. Okay, so we have been in since our beginning from 2016. We've been actually looking at EHR and EHR standards and all, and building systems that were compliant to these systems. That was like the mandate with which we started. So when this opportunity came to us, the biggest attraction that we had for that was the importance of EHR, the clinical data, in the whole program in this in the solution. Okay, so this was a big attraction for us, and then we kind of looked at it. The first starting point was to actually look at and define what is the problem that we should solve from a EHR or clinical data perspective, and then we came out with this one short problem statement which guided us through this process of creating this, which is make BMR. BMR is a basic medical record. It has been defined in the National Mental Health Care Act as what constitutes a BMR. So our mandate was to actually make BMR available to all stakeholders on a need basis, granular and privacy aware. Okay, because what we are talking about is healthcare data, which is very private data of people, and especially mental health care data is even more private. Okay, because there is a lot of things that people may not want to actually share with everybody. So handling such data is very important. At the same time, to maintain continuity of care, we need to ensure that the data also is available as required. Okay, this was a challenge that we were looking at. And what was the solution that we worked towards? Okay, in the end, we ended up creating a public health platform on our EHR network. So EHR network is our product that we are working on, which is actually the cloud-based health information platform, standards compliant. So we ended up creating a public health platform out of this EHR network. Okay, this was jointly developed between EHRC and Healthy Life, and it was based on OpenEHR, which is actually a reference model, a open reference model for creating health systems. It is federated and with data so that privacy is built into the design itself. Okay, on the right side you can see a schematic diagram of the components that are included in the EHR network. So just to come back to EHR network, it is something that we are continuously developing and supporting. It is actually a secure and standards compliant. It has been designed with privacy as a core. It's privacy aware. That's what we call. Okay, we build privacy into the design of the application itself. So everything is federated. Okay, the data is federated between multiple services, so that the chance of data leak and breach is comparatively reduced. Then we have generic. It is very generic and it can be used in variety of clinical use cases. Okay, it has since been publicly made available from April 2020. So when we set out on this creating this public health platform, we had certain challenges that we encountered from both technically and from a standard compliance perspective. So I'll take you through some of those key points in the next couple of slides. Okay. One was, okay, like Professor mentioned, we wanted to ensure that we don't create a silo of information. We want to ensure that we are part of this ecosystem that is evolving as we speak. Okay, so we looked at, when we started, we looked at some of the standards that that were already there. The government has actually come out with. And first of which was like in 2016, we India came out with its version 2 of the Indian EHR standards. Okay, so since 2016, the movement had started. Okay, different standards and compliance regulations were all coming in at a faster pace. Okay, and we were able to keep pace with that. So this EHR standard, brought out a couple of concepts, very novel concepts. One was person-controlled shared health data as a core of any healthcare system, okay, that India wants to build, and a seamless interoperability across systems. Okay, it also identified certain standards such as OpenEHR for the clinical modeling, SNOMED CT and ICD-10 as concept models, okay, ontology libraries that should be used. Okay, so that was a base for us. And as we started moving, the next regulatory piece came in, which is actually the National Health Stack, which was actually a technology framework for implementing what was envisaged in the Indian EHR standards. What the Health Stack identified was a set of common infrastructure for data sharing, okay, which will be probably done at the national and state levels, and a set of registries at national level, which includes patient, practitioner, provider, okay, all kinds of different stakeholders in the healthcare ecosystem, and all these connected through a set of open APIs. Okay, so these were the broad guidelines that we had also, and we realized that we had to follow that. But unfortunately for us, during the phase, the time when we were building e-Manas, none of this was in place. Even now, none of it is in place. So we had to build a system which would actually integrate into these systems as they become available. At the same time, had to create everything from scratch. So we ended up creating a microcosm of this digital health blueprint, which came out in 2019. Okay, so we had to create the registries ourselves. We had to create APIs, everything we had to create. Okay, but in the end, when the National Digital Health Blueprint came up, we were happy to see that we've been validated, because we are now in a stage to be able to integrate into that when it becomes available. Now, in healthcare, okay, one is interoperability of information, which is very key to actually in ensuring continuity of care. But then simple data interoperability is not good enough in healthcare. So we need to achieve something called semantic interoperability. So it is simply defined as exchange of data with unambiguous shared meaning. That means the receiver has to understand the meaning with which the creator of the data created the data. Okay, so not just the data. So we need to have the data and the context being shared. I'll just take you through a brief example. Okay, so what is required to make this happen is actually you need to have shared structure of data and shared concepts. Okay, to make this happen. So I'll just briefly take you through this one example here. Okay, so you're aware of simple blood pressure, which is actually a simple. We all take blood pressures all the time, and we look at systolic, diastolic pressure. But if you look at the model, this is a model that we have taken from OpenEHR. Okay, and if you look at the model, you can see that data only forms a small portion. There's a whole lot of contextual information, such as state, protocol, and events. Okay, when you say state, it defines how the patient was. Was he sitting? Was he lying down? What state was he in? Protocols defined where the measurement was taken, what devices were used. So all this becomes the clinical model. Okay, so this whole information has to be shared for the receiver to understand the data completely. Okay, and then as we, when we start creating data, okay, recording data, what we do is we create instances of this model, okay, in the context of a patient. So when we do that, we have to bring in ontology layers on top. That means we have to start bringing the concept model, the models that define different pieces of data that we record. Like, for example, when we say location, where that measurement was taken is on the right angle, we have to be able to define right angle in an unambiguous way so that it is universally understood. This is achieved through ontology systems. Okay, so Here we typically use SNOMED is one ontology system there. So this was like the way we achieved semantic interoperability. Next challenge was to actually create. So to achieve semantic interoperability, we need one is clinical models. Okay, so how do you create these clinical models? Okay, so we chose OpenEHR as a paradigm for it. OpenEHR defines a framework for you to actually create these clinical models. Okay, they have built a reference model and a framework for that. So we chose that model, and there is a public repository of models that are maintained and and available at all the time. So this is at the CKM, what we call the Clinical Knowledge Manager. So that is the primary source of these models, which are community managed, okay, by people across the world. So the modeling process we followed is, first is we need to gather the information. Okay, then now this was done by EHRC team, from NIMHANS, primarily provided by the NIMHANS doctors. And then we had to map these to clinical concepts such as observation, evaluation, instruction, and action, because clinical data actually follows into one of these four broad concepts. Then we had to go to the CKM, look for available models. There are hundreds of them. So we had to actually spend a lot of time evaluating and getting the right models and create new models as required. Okay. So when what we found was when we went through this process, what we found was mental health, okay, data is still globally, okay, not understood well. So we had very few models to actually pick up from the CKM. So we had to create a lot of these models, and to create these models we had to understand the concepts. Okay, when a doctor says something is to be recorded, we had to do a lot of research to understand what does it really mean, in what context does the doctor record this. All this was like took us a lot of effort and time. And then once the models were in place, we had to actually come out with the concept model terminologies. Okay, we had to actually choose which ones to use, okay, to define the data that we record. Okay, so we had this choice of ICD-10 and SNOMED-CT, which were both there in the EHR standards. We looked at both and realized that ICD-10 is primarily a classification system. That means it is ideal for reporting, and the classifications are at a much higher granularity level. Okay, so whereas SNOMED-CT is extremely granular and it is an ontological structure. By ontological structure means it has got a very complex relationship, and it is constituted by around 500,000 words and phrases that describe healthcare healthcare systems. Okay, and they have a complex relationship of ESA, finding site, methods, etc. So we wanted to go with SNOMED-CT. But unfortunately, when we started rolling out, we realized that people are very comfortable with the ICD-10 because they've been using it for many of their reporting purposes. But SNOMED-CT was not something which people were very familiar with. So we had to go with the ICD in the first phase, but we plan to actually bring in SNOMED-CT in the next phase. Thank you.
Thanks, Dilip. Step back. So Dilip has explained sort of one of the core parts, which is the health data and how it should be recorded, all the issues related to that. I'll step back to a larger level and say, what is the system all about? So at a very functional level, if you look at the system that we have right now, what we have in what we are talking about, the eManus is the central registry and repository. There are many portals or interfaces to that can be used by different groups of people. There is a registry or directory that hospitals and doctors will be registered. So Karnataka will bring out a rule saying all mental health professionals and their establishments have to be registered here. So there is one record of all these things. On the other side, we have the judicial or the oversight bodies, the State Mental Health Authority and the Mental Health Review Boards, who under the Act have some very specific functions to perform, oversight and audits and things like that. Then we have the patients themselves who are going to put up what are called advance directives as an example. An advance directive essentially is like what's called a living will sometime, where you can put down how you want to be treated or not want to be treated, and all medical establishment is expected to follow that. You can just think about the complex that a person may write it somewhere, but it has to be available in every clinic everywhere, but at the same time be maintained in a private way. The main use of the system will be by the medical professionals, the doctors, nurses, social workers, psychologists, and so on. And there, what we have built is a system that can be used by any doctor authorized by the state. Of course, the system is going to be rolled out and deployed and managed by the state. So I'm talking about the functionality that's there. We IIIT are not going to run it. And so there are modules for essentially what Dilip just mentioned as the basic medical records. How do you record outpatient and inpatient information. And the law also mandates certain workflows. For instance, if a patient is admitted under certain conditions, information about that needs to go to the mental health review board. So there are these requirements in a time-bound fashion. So these kind of requirements are also there. This is a phase that's been done and it's been released. One important thing to bring in is the whole notion of identity. So right now we are leveraging Karnataka has this as part of the Ayushman Bharat Arogya Karnataka scheme. That's a unique ID that each person can get. So we're using that as one of the primary IDs. But of course, if a person goes for healthcare and doesn't have an ID, they still need to get care. So we have put up a mechanism for managing that. The next phase, we will look at integration with other EHR systems, other hospital systems that are there, NIMHANS, the government e-hospital, private clinics, and so on. And this is the next big phase that we are looking at, is how do we integrate outwards to various hospitals, various services, 108 service, 104 service, and so on. So this is the sort of, and of course, on the other side, in the future, we're looking at how this data can be made accessible in a secure, private way for research, administration, policy making, and all those things. So once we have this, right now there is no way to know, for instance, in a concrete way, how many people have, while there is the district mental program has a mechanism to collect data about the number of people who got treated in different clinics. We don't have this picture in a more granular way or across private and public hospitals. So it will allow policy making to be done much better too. If you get down to what the software system architecture looks like, as Dilip had mentioned, it was important to use standard components, standards-based components. And so and at the same time have a good modularity in this, because many of these are parts that can change a lot depending on new requirements or regulations that could come in, or integration capabilities and so on. So the part that Dilip talked about is what we have in the bottom right here, which is built around the EHR.network product of this. Is essentially a system that allows health data to be recorded, demographics to be captured, and an authentication authorization server that manages all these things. And this works through REST APIs that other systems can do. What we have built on top of that is the layer that helps manage public health related cases, and specifically mental health. So there is data that's relevant to that is kept separate. So we have this core data that's maintained in various databases, both for security and performance reasons, and a central security mechanism, and various services that are needed from the application level, management of health records, demographics, access control, various workflows that I mentioned, and so on. So these are all done through the intermediate layers below the API. So like I said, so the system is designed very modular way, using standard frameworks and components, Hibernate, Spring, REST APIs, JSON over HTTP, and so on. The front end is done using Angular material design, and so on. From external system standpoint, which could be other hospitals, it could be other ecosystem members that we have to connect with in the future. We are looking at least from our standpoint, providing FHIR-based interfaces that can. So a private hospital who has their own EHR system will be able to integrate with this and pass in the data that is needed as per the requirements. So again, based on the exact way the government rolls out the regulations, there could be different levels of data that needs to be exchanged between these. So that's the approach we've taken. So again, like I said, luckily for us, or I shouldn't say luckily for us, one of the reasons we adopted the Healthy Lives platform is they had the same philosophy. They had a Java-based backend and using standard components. So our commitment to the government is to use open source components. So there's no proprietary stuff in this whole thing. We look at a couple of the important challenges and what we've done about it. Security is obviously, now we're building a system that's going to be taken over and run by the state. So security principles have to be done very carefully. So we have made sure that our design and implementation adhere to all the standard security guidelines and practices, OWASP top 10, what the various government guidelines do, and so on. So things like protection against web attacks and SQL injection, encryption of data at different levels, depending on the context and the kind of data, keeping the different data separate. So even in case of physical attacks, there could be limited breaching. And then building in multi-stage authentication authorization at the UI level, at the REST API level, at the data access level, and so on. This system has been certified by third-party audits and approved by the state data center, and it's been deployed there and is running right there, as I said. And Apart from security, probably the bigger issue, which is what actually was very intriguing and important for us from the beginning, is the whole notion of privacy. This was a evolving area in India. When we started the project, the Supreme Court judgment on privacy had not yet come out, or just came out about the same time. So we were in a very early stage of this whole discussion. And in fact, in some of the early discussions with the stakeholder, there's no agreement at all on whether you need to worry, how much we need to worry about privacy. But luckily, we took the line that we'll do what's called privacy by design, have privacy as a core consideration of all our design. And so we've been looked at various best practices of privacy, keeping up with the EU GDPR, personal data protection, other regulations, and bringing in those principles into the design and implementation that are done. So the data owner is the owner of the records, not the hospital. The hospital is just a custodian. Collect the minimum amount of data that you need, only what's needed either by the law or for treatment and so on. Allow the data owner, that is the patient, control over sharing of their data, subsets of the data, right? You might go to one hospital and then go to hospital 2 and say that I want to, or let's say 2 other hospitals. When you go to the 3rd hospital, you might choose to reveal the information that you have in hospital 1, but not in hospital 2. We now need to enable these things digitally, right? So there's notion of granular data, consent, time-bound consent, and principles of purpose limitation, time limitation, retention, and so on, which the policies will dictate how exactly they're implemented. And finally, having things like audit logs to ensure that post facto we can do analysis and so on. All of these had to be constantly kept in mind because they have a big impact and the implication on how we design. What should the front end look like? How do we get consent? How do we make sure that the doctor does not have access to information that they are not authorized to see? How do we do the services level? How do we do the database level? So we had to build in a lot of concept, many of these concepts translated into the designs that we did at various levels. One big open area, I would say in a way, because it's also evolving as we speak, is consent-based access. So now the whole point becomes that, as I said, the data, health data is owned by the patient. And the patient gives his or her consent to doctors and others to use their data appropriately, right? So that is the law, or that will be the law once the personal data protection bill is passed. And there can be different kinds of consent. Some are explicit. For instance, again, some of these are regulation-based. Creation and storage, right from the starting, your data can be stored only if you give consent. It can be accessed only based on consent. Access by regulatory authorities could be either based on policies or consent and so on. So while we built the mechanism, and again, we are tracking what's going on at the national level because the MIT, the National Health Stack, all of them are bringing out consent mechanisms. We also are doing research, and one of our PhD scholars, Swapnil Sivaswaj, looking exactly at this area is how do we build in consent-based mechanisms in a health record setup. The part that is going to be a big challenge, I believe, is what's the user facing. How do you get consent from a patient, depending on the different demographics and contexts in which you are? This is still an open issue. We have put some mechanisms through discussion with MIMANS and the government. This I see will evolve quite a bit. Starting with simple things like how do you authenticate the user? If somebody says here, sure, you can see my data, how do we know it's that person? Right now, we're using OTP as the default mechanism, but this has to presumably get replaced by more sophisticated schemes. So yeah, so that is the quick tour of the security and privacy challenges. I'll now let Divyaraj take over. Divyaraj, can you step in and talk about the fun journey we've had so far?
Thanks, Professor Srikanth. So when we started this program formally sometime around November 2018, so again, as like any other program, this program also had quite a few ambiguities, but what made it notch or two high in terms of ambiguities is the fact that this was the first of its kind solution. This was related to mental health. We were talking about compliance with the Mental Health Care Act, and that had just been passed, and the mental health care rules were yet to be defined for the states. We're also talking about building a health data registry. We're also talking about consent mechanism. So all these things were, I would say, not very new as such, but we didn't have any kind of good examples to follow around us. And we did not have much examples like this, at least anywhere in the country at that point of time. Then we also had the one challenge in our minds, like again, the technology adoption in the public healthcare space, that is going to be very, very challenging because we are talking about adoption of a new kind of a system to be used by the healthcare workers and the doctors who will always be kind of stressed on time. And we did not have any kind of solutions which will really facilitate the doctors save their time. So rather, most of the digital systems, what we see, those, especially in the public healthcare space and the government space, so what we see is like many of those are being handled by the data entry operators. While we wanted that these things, the data entry should be done by actual users at the point of those events. So that would be very, very challenging. And we had user experience in our minds when we started this program. Then again, we also had to cater to a very diverse ecosystem. So on one side, we had hospitals like NIMHANS or the other medical colleges and institutions in the state. On the other side, we had the primary healthcare centers, the community healthcare centers, and district hospitals. So we had to build something which would cater to all of them. Even in terms of users also, so the kind of technology comfort of these users also raised quite a bit. And we also had to make sure like the same system can be used by the doctors as well as the social workers. Then again, as Professor Srikanth and Dilip mentioned, this was a very, very sensitive data. This data was related to healthcare, demographics of patients, and this was related to mental health care. With so much of stigma and other aspects, this data had to be kept very sensitive. Then again, the number of stakeholders, that was pretty much on the higher side. We had a large number of stakeholders from whom we had to get the inputs, the approvals, the authorizations. And then the requirements not clear, so that meant that we had a larger dependency on these stakeholders. So anyway, fortunately, like we had a team which we'll be talking about from NIMHANS also, there was a ramping up, which helped in kind of working out through all these challenges. And then another challenge was like none of us had a prior experience with respect to very specific government process involved. Because this project was there right from conceptualization till implementation and rollouts. And we, at some point of time, like we did not have full clarity on how we'll be going ahead with some of those things when we started the program. And then lastly, the ramping up challenges with this kind of a program, with the kind of academic and research center setup we had. So we could see like there were some challenges. Of course, the same setup also offered some advantages, but yeah, these ramping up challenges had also to be tackled. Yeah, so the way we went about it is like again with a clear strategy of aligning with the defined objectives, which were like compliance with the Mental Health Care Act, then focusing on adoption, and then doing a digitization and making sure that the data is coming into the systems. So with these high-level strategy aspects in our minds, we started in our e-manage journey. And initially, we did a lot of search and research on the existing solutions. We could see like there were many other open source, very sophisticated systems also existing. But again, we could not have gone for one of those because the requirements here were very, very specific. And we wanted to create a simple system ensuring that that actually gets used. Because we could see like there were many other systems with a lot of sophisticated features, but then many of them were just being used only for demographics. And we often see that in case of e-hospital also at places. So what we also did was like we did a lot of field visits to various primary healthcare centers, then the community care centers and our district hospitals also. We also went for a lot of user experience sessions where we spent some time with the NIMHANS psychiatrists in their OP wards, seeing actually how they do the consultations, how they handle the patients, and how they record all the details. So those were kind of very, very informative. And in fact, like it was a very humbling experience for all of us. So based on all these field visits and the UX sessions, so what we could see, like again, we had to cater to a very diverse ecosystem. So we started analyzing the common denominators. So what can be that common system which can be used by all these different kind of establishments? And then we also did an analysis of the user personas involved. We could see like, again, if we are talking about real adoption of this kind of platform. So with respect to the users, keeping their aspects in mind, we could see like there were multifold challenges. So first one was like they will have to switch to a technology platform, while the regular mode is like we are having the paper-based prescriptions. So switching them to a technology platform is not going to be easy. Then second thing was also like, again, we did not want to bring anything new. And then we had this Mental Health Care Act also passed. Many people were not aware of all these, the different provisions of the act, the different rules which had to be followed and the process which had to be followed. So with these aspects also in our mind, so we started our design work. And three key aspects which we kept in our minds was, one was that we should build something which should not be very unfamiliar for the users. We should be using the terminology, we should be using the flow, which will be as close as possible to the current mechanism where we are using the paper. Then we wanted to keep it very simple. We did not want to create a very, very sophisticated hospital management system. We wanted to keep it simple because the objective was that it should be used at the point of those events by the actual users. And then third aspect which we kept our minds was that this system also should be, one thing, it should be self-explanatory. And the second thing is this should enable the people to understand the process, to enable them to be able to use the overall platform. So by putting some right messages, having the right flows, so all those things had to be taken care of. And we went about it in a very iterative way. So what we used to do was we had defined demo checkpoints for each of the modules. So as soon as we had the one module ready in some kind of a demoable shape, so we used to give a demo to the NIMHANS team members. Then after that, we also did one round of beta testing with the district mental health program teams across the various districts. Then we also took the government of Karnataka feedbacks because this was important from their overall governance perspective. And then what we also planned was after each of the releases, so we'll be getting the feedbacks from the users and then incorporating those feedbacks towards improving the overall user experience further and ensuring that it gets adopted as much as possible. Though again, because of COVID-19, I do see some challenges, like now that the release 1 has happened. So how we are going to do that field visits may not work, but we'll have to probably look at some other options using Zoom or something else. So we are yet to figure out what can be those ways. Yeah, we can move on to the next one. Yeah, so this kind of gives an overview of all the different stakeholders and the teams which were involved. When I started putting it up, so this looked like the field placement for a cricket match. But yeah, in the center on the pitch, what you see, that is the core team, which was comprised of the EHRC team. And then we had 2 psychiatrists from the NIMHANS team dedicated for this project, which helped us a lot in terms of getting clarity about all the requirements and sorting out various clarifications with respect to mental health care rules and provisions and all. Then we also onboarded Healthy Life as our partners for the EHR engine. And then a steering committee also was formed with representatives from IIITB, from Government of Karnataka, and from the NIMHANS team. And what you see on the right side, those are various Government of Karnataka teams from different applications with which we are doing the integrations. So we had the Ayushman Bharat Arogya Karnataka team. Then we have the 104 Arogya Vani team, 108 Ambulance Services team, the KPME team, NIC, DMHP technical team. Then on the right side towards the bottom, we have the security audit team. So we had to go through the elaborate security audit process for moving these things into the production environment. And we also had the state data center team with whom we had to collaborate for setting up the production environment and now also the staging environment. On the left side, you see those 3 teams. We have the DMHP district teams, the NIMHANS extended team, and the private practitioners and other mental health professionals who helped us with functional validations at each of the steps, with inputs towards compliance with the Mental Health Care Act, with inputs with respect to user experience and how to improve further, and then also with the user acceptance testing. And then we also collaborated with various nodal organizations and collaborators like the NRCES, and aligning with the National Digital Health Blueprint frameworks, And at the same time, we also use our various resources from the institute and academic center, research center perspective. We use our researchers for privacy and consent aspects. We used we leverage some of our folks for the blockchain and speech to text kind of evaluations, which we did not use in the current platform. But yes, we did evaluate those things for our overall platform and coming up with a final technology stack. And also we did some prototyping with respect to the chatbots and natural language processing. So this kind of gives an overall end-to-end journey for the eManas Karnataka implementation, right from the conceptualization of this platform, which was way back in April 2018. Then we had the go-aheads and MOU signing with NIMANS in November 2018. And then what I think I'll not be able to go ahead with each and every aspect, but yeah, some of the challenges which we had to face, I would just highlight those. So again, in terms of ramping up and coming up with a final technology stack. So yes, we spent a little longer than what we had expected. And then again, there's a lot of push for coming up with the initial modules as quickly as possible. But we could see like that did not really work so well because that led to quite a bit of rework. But again, yeah, our iterative development approach that helped in terms of making all the stakeholders comfortable because they could see some of those modules and keep on providing their inputs, which helped us in improving these modules incrementally. Then yeah, another thing which kind of was not really strictly as per our project plans was this the quality audit. So where like we had a tough time in terms of onboarding the quality audit team because of their lack of bandwidth and unavailability for almost a month. Then after that, when they became available and we started onboarding them, we could see like their platform was not compatible with the newest of the technologies and that was not working for us. And again, we had to hunt for another similar vendor, which was authorized by the government. Then again, yeah, another aspect which really took a bit longer than what we had expected, that was deployment in the state data center. So again, not knowing the intricacies of all these aspects. So we had to go through multiple iterations in terms of filling up the forms for each and every port which had to be opened, not just to the public, but also for the servers to communicate with each other. So it was really nice to see like those kinds of strict process in place, which makes the state data center application more robust. But yes, it did take a little extra time than what we would have anticipated earlier. But yeah, at the same time, with those learnings in our kitty, we have been able to set up the staging environment. At least we have been able to get the infrastructure and all those things in place very quickly in one shot of approvals from the various nodal officers. In terms of next steps, so the platform has now been released and we are doing the level 3 support. We have to do the integrations with other public and private establishments, and then possibly we'll be handing it over to the other service providers. But yeah, we are looking forward to a good adoption of the platform and possibly scaling it up for other states as well, as we are seeing there's a lot of requests and interest in the platform. Yeah, next one. Yeah, these were the primary teams and the various team members which were involved: Government of Karnataka, the NIMANS team, the eHealth Research Center IIIDB team, and the Healthy Life team. I would like to add that now we are having a very strong and dynamic team from the eHealth Research Center, and we have also been able to create a good set of reusable frameworks and components, which in fact we already started reusing for various other COVID-19 projects, and probably will also be publishing those to be reused at IIITB level and maybe open source some of those things as well. Yeah, next one. Yeah, so this kind of gives our journey in pictures. So it was a very interesting journey, and with this, I would also open the forum for any kind of questions which you would like to pose. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. So I think we can take questions. Like anybody can ask questions. There aren't any questions on the chat. So
may I ask a question? This is Venkat here, one of the participants.
Okay.
yeah, please.
I'm just thinking through on the architecture and the framework that you have mentioned. What about the reusability for some of the other modules, which are also normally planned treatment or interventions, like as an illustration for oncology?
So I think the going bottom up, the core EHR reason we adopted Open EHR is to allow new conditions to be added, again following the same set of standards. Some of these other modules like the organization management, patient demographics, all those should be completely reusable. There's nothing there that's specific to mental health. Obviously, there's a mental health layer in terms of the clinical models and also some of the workflows that are there and the exact portal, the front ends that are there. But beyond that, the intent is to keep these so that new verticals can be added to this.
You can talk about who the user base is.
Yeah, so the user base, right now, there are two, I think the one primary user base is the doctors in different contexts, in whether it's a primary healthcare center or a major hospital, or potentially even out in the field. That's one user base. In the future, though, we don't have it right now. We have some very limited things. Patients and their families, caregivers would also be users, though that we have not done much yet. We just got some minimum functionality, and that's not been a focus area. Did the team interact? Yes, not with, as I said, we have not really interacted directly with mental health patients. We let, because that had not been a focus, that patient portal is very minimal right now. Patients have a choice to opt in or out. Yes. Again, we have to wait for the government regulations to get formalized on this, but patients would have to give consent for the data to be collected. And according to the data protection bill, they would have the right to revoke the data also. So we have to see how that actually gets rolled out. Dispute, one of the important parts I didn't mention is as part of the Mental Health Care Act, there is a grievance mechanism that has been set up. So actually the one part of the patient portal, that's one of the few parts is anybody can log in and upload a grievance. And that has to be reviewed by the appropriate mental health review board, who will then have, with the appropriate controls, access to the relevant information in the system. That's so it could be any kind of dispute. What mandatory information? Right now, we are not using Aadhaar, we're using mobile number. And if they have, Arogya Karnataka ID, we use that. Otherwise, right now, as a stopgap mechanism, we are allowing them to enroll using a ration card or any other ID. These are used only for re-authenticating them at the mental health review board. Right now, OTP is the only mechanism we have for validating. Can they use a pseudonym? No, those are no different from what other medical practices and other rules are. Again, many of these are evolving. I think under the telemedicine guidelines, there's some new rules that have come up. We have to see how those get rolled out. Is there a safeguard against governments misusing the data? Actually, the setup is such that no individual or user has access unless the patient has given control. We expect that the data protection bill and other things that are coming in will guard against any other misuse beyond this. The only reason the data is there is either for the patient's benefit when they go to another doctor, or so their history can be managed in a consistent way, and for statistical analysis, right? Number of patients and so on.
Srikanth, there is a question before that, which is somewhat related, I think. Ritvik Javkal is asking, are there any plans of a data correlation project in progress? Is this for tracing warnings of people with mental illness in critical job roles?
Right now, we have not focused beyond this. The idea is to get this platform which integrates the existing services and enables kind of normal things. The intent is other services and other such things will get added. We are not directly working on any of that right now. I should just clarify that at this point, this is a system for, you can think of it as a registry of various kinds of data to allow ease of access to data across different access points. It is not a comprehensive mental health services platform in that sense. That is the goal in the longer term. And many of these may be independent systems that come up and get connected to this.
Arjun Bhaskaran has a comment that this can be expanded to for solution for other states and into the space of private payers outside.
Yes. So the government's intent right now is to make this current portal available even to private players free of cost. So at least the basic data they're supposed to be able to maintain, enter and maintain and so on. We are talking to other states and through the Delhi Health Department to see if there is some early interest in this being adopted by the states, NIMANS would probably keep some of those things because they work with all these different states. So absolutely, the design is such that it can be replicated fairly easily. Some small amount of customization will be needed. We are looking at what it might mean to have actually, at least in a design level, what a pan-India rollout might be. Those decisions, like I said, this is a government system, and many of these will actually go through those processes before they are rolled out.
Okay. Next is a techie question. Any specific purpose of using Angular 7? Can it be developed using React.js?
No, that was always I think they can make case for either one. It's almost a religious argument. So we decided to go with Angular. I think one of the reasons was easier availability of developers. People who are proficient in Angular is probably easier to find than React. But in terms of, there are also other modules and plugins that we could get easily. But yeah, you could. There's no strong reason React versus Angular. That's a whole separate discussion we can.
The next one is, how did you come up with the model for the data?
Yeah.
Since there aren't that many.
Dilip, you want to take that?
Okay, I'm sorry if I was not very clear about that in my presentation. So the whole system is built on OpenEHR reference model. Okay, and OpenEHR has got a repository of clinical information models, very large numbers. The CKM has got very large numbers of clinical models which cater to most of the normal healthcare use cases. And when we started looking at it, we did find quite a few which we could use. Like we had things like medication, diagnosis, and vital recording. All these things we could actually use these models. So we didn't create them. We actually took from mature models from the CKM and used. But we also realized that there are many, if there are any specific mental health related data that was being gathered, there were not many good models available. Okay, so we had to create some of those. So I would put the ratio to 60% we could reuse and 40% we had to create. And over a longer term, our idea is that once we mature these models, we want to contribute it back to the community. We will probably put it back into the CKM so that others can actually contribute and make it better. Okay, as of now, our learnings are minimal, so our models are very immature, I would put, but it is functional. That is where we stand.
Thanks, Sandeep. The next question is Chandan Teja is asking, regarding consent-based privacy, the user will be the owner of the data.
So yeah, you can think of it. I mean, ACL I would see as a more lower level access control mechanism. Consent is a more higher level, which has lots of semantics or policy kind of things associated with that. So ultimately, at some level, you probably do an ACL, but we're looking at a layer above that, which will say, for instance, when you go to a hospital and give consent for a particular action, there is a certain set of people who have to get access to different kinds of data. And that mechanism is what we are talking about when we say consent-based, right? It's not, it can't just a simple role-based doesn't work because it has to take the context into account, it has to take the purpose into account, it has to have things like time limitation and stuff and so on. So there is a layer, I mean, ACL is a mechanism, but we have to do layers on top of that. So yes, ACL will give you the ultimate granular access, but how do you orchestrate this whole thing about that? Think about a patient who is allowed to revoke access, can say that this doctor or this hospital can no longer access my data. So there has to be a way to take those kinds of requirements and at runtime kind of translate into what the actual data access control would be. How many approximate total person months I can't, it's difficult to estimate it offhand, but we'll think in the background and maybe come back on that. Dilip, question for Dilip. How can authorities ensure that abuser would be legally entitled, doesn't abuse the system or frame the game? So I can also try to answer. Again, there is still, like I said, the front end is still a little bit ambiguous in terms of how some of these will be managed. I think initially we'll have this, at an overall system, the government will come out with the regulations and rules that say what the exact mechanisms of patient identification and so on. Right now, there has to be a combination of some kind of physical identification of the patient and an OTP mechanism, which might be get replaced by some biometric-like mechanism later. So the idea is to minimize these kind of things. We're also assuming that the mental health professional is in the, is trying to safeguard the rights of the patients and will not allow these kind of things to happen. But I think some of these are to be worked out, I think, as the system evolves, as the usage evolves, I should say. Is there any idea of, I guess, publishing this as anonymized for research purpose? Yes, that's the long-term intent. I think we'll wait for while the system gets rolled out and data actually gets corrected. That's in the future phase. We are looking at how data extraction, data dissemination can happen from this. That would be a very interesting area. That's something we are very interested in, but it's not. I think it's not going to happen in the next year or so till the system gets adopted and we have enough data. So one of the big challenges in healthcare, public healthcare systems in general India is not enough real data actually gets entered in the system. And one of the challenges here will be to make sure that actual clinical data gets entered sufficiently so that we can make both good policy decisions and be able to conduct research on the data. And Professor Prabhu, no, we have not yet built in any of those. The data is there. These would be subsequent projects that we will take up, hopefully. One is at what level of granularity. Right now, what we have done is a patient, we have a history, which is essentially a series of visits to a doctor, if you want to look at it that way. Today, the implementation we are doing is you can look at the history at a particular clinic as your granularity. We could easily make it per visit granularity also. Yes, it may not be best for the patient to not reveal some data. That's a risk. But again, we have to see how the data protection bill gets rolled out and how the medical council and others interpret that. From a technical level, we have set it up so that you can have very granular hiding or revealing of data. The current data protection bill would allow, or even so the government had something called DISHA, Digital Information Security for Healthcare Act, which was a draft bill, which was specific was privacy specific to healthcare. And that very clearly stated the patient should be allowed to reveal pockets of information, nuggets of information, if you want to call it that. So again, exactly how it gets manifested in the system will
Professor,
be.
can I take a call there? Can I contribute?
Yeah, Dilip, add, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So
yes,
here,
please.
yeah. So this question is very interesting because this is not a decision that at a system level we can take, or anybody who is building the system can take. Because if everybody starts deciding these kind of things, then the whole concept of interoperability gets broken. Okay. So there are a lot of things, like Professor said, the PDP Act will probably come out with the broad definition of how the information granularity will be controlled, and then it will be up to the medical community. If DISHA Act comes on top, then it will probably define this granularity that needs to be followed as as a nation, okay, and which everybody has to adopt. If not, then probably the medical council or somebody in the healthcare domain will have to actually define this level of granularity that is required. So it has to be a national consensus. It cannot be something that a system designer like us or anybody else can actually decide.
Okay. If there are no further questions, we can give a round of applause for the speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the nice talk. And it's quite an achievement for the team, yeah, for it to get this much recognition and all of that. So congratulations, keep going, make more contributions in the HIMS systems and things like that. Yeah.
Thanks, Jaya. Thanks to everyone for listening. I think it's been a pleasure for us to work on this project and to present this. I think we look forward to, I think as technologists, we step in and try to work with the medical community and the administrators, see how healthcare can be improved. Public health is a huge problem, and data and the management of data, I believe, is going to really improve these things. So we're happy to be part of this.